Welcome to Chapter 2, Video Compositing and Post Effects. In this chapter, we will talk about video processing in Notch. Now, before we delve into the workshops, I'm just going to mention that I opened the 02 chapter, Video Compositing and Post Effects. And once I have it open, I see that there's some videos that fail to load. So let's talk a little bit about file handling in Notch. If the video comes in with a red markup and the message failed to load, that means that the path to a linked video is broken, so we can reestablish that. I'm going to right click and go for Find Missing Resource. Then I'm going to click on these little three dots and I'm going to navigate to the folder that holds assets for video. So Notch Essential, Assets, Video. I am in the right place here. So it looks like it's not populated with videos, this folder, but if I go to the file structure in Windows, I will see that there are videos indeed. Now, the reason why we see none of those here in Notch UI is because we are referring to a specific location, not to a specific video. So not seeing your video assets here, it's totally fine. I'm going to hit Select Folder. Okay, and I see that all my videos now are relinked. If you choose to have your videos embedded to your Notch file, you can right-click and untick Do Not Embed Resource. As you see, now the video file is marked up white, hence it's actually embedded in a DFX file. The reason why we don't embed files by default is so we could save the overall size of your work files. If you're working with media servers, very likely you're using these videos only as a reference point and you're going to swap them out with the actual camera feed in your final design. So we choose not to embed the videos into the work file. This is a common practice in majority of 2D and 3D applications as well. Now, this embedding workflow is true only to video. Images, textures, 3D objects, sound files, all of them will always be included in your DFX file. So it's only the videos that are embedded or linked externally. Right, so with that said, let's discuss a couple of most common ways of outputting video via Notch. So we have two specific nodes that corresponds with those tasks. So it's image 2D and image plane. So let's talk about image 2D first. So if I connect that to the root, I see that all of a sudden my viewport is filled in with the white canvas. Image 2D always grabs all available space in a viewport and fills it in. Now, if I was to go to Project Settings, Rendering, and change the width of this setup to 3840 by 1080, all of a sudden you will see that this image 2D actually corresponded and adapted to a changed canvas size. Alternatively, image plane lives in 3D space and it's available for you in any and all positional values. So if you're building a 3D scene that requires an image plane, this is exactly the node that you would use. So in this specific workshop, we will focus on 2D workflows. So I'm going to delete the image plane and I'm going to focus on image 2D. So I'm connecting it to the root. I think I'm going to go back to Project Settings, Rendering, and I'm going to change the width of this setup to original or the default 1920 by 1080. Right, so now we have a quad of an output, but we don't have any video to output. So let's grab one of the videos available in resources. I'm going to go for base. First off, I'm going to connect it to the image 2D, and then we're going to talk about different and all properties available in image 2D and in video loader. This node came in hashed out gray, implying that it needs some kind of a connection to actually be useful, to actually be rendered. Now, if I hover over the output and click on it, I will see all the plausible hookups for this specific node. So in this case, image 2D has three inputs that can correspond with the output of the video loader. So that's video node, alpha image, and UV remap image. I'm going to go for the first one, video node. And as I press space, I see this video being played out via image 2D now. Great. So let's talk about attributes in video loader and image 2D. So video loader has a preview in the viewport option, which will make more sense and will be more applicable as we build more complex setups. It has a video dropdown, so any and all videos that we have in our resources can be accessed via this dropdown. So you don't really need to bring in one by one or reconnect it. You can just literally choose it from the dropdown. You can set in specific frame rates and you can actually flip it on the X and Y axis. So basically you can treat the signal in any way you need and you feel necessary. Image 2D is an output module, so you can position it in 2D space You can crop it, and you can change blend modes. There are various other properties that are very handy, and we're going to discover them as we progress through the course. Now, with this initial setup completed, let's add some post effects. I think I'm going to start with glow. As soon as I connect glow to the root, I see that it's activated. I'm going to add one more node. I'm going to go for edge detect. Now let's make our edge detect a little bit wider. So in the width property, I'm going to set 2. Now notice what happens if I change the positional values of these 2 nodes. Stacking order in Notch is very important. So if Notch doesn't recognize the stacking order from top to bottom, it would go for left to right. So by changing the positional values of our post effects, we can actually change the design of our setup quite significantly. And that's true to quite a few other systems in Notch. Another big thing to mention about post effects, majority of them actually have different blend modes. So in this case, under the edge detect, I think I'm going to choose something else, perhaps difference. And I see that my glow is rather hard. So under the glow node, I'm going to increase the threshold. Yes, I think this looks much better now. In fact, I can come back to edge detect and give it a color. For instance, maybe red. Great. Now, probably we should add some more creative post effects. I think I'm going to go for motion data mesh. As I connect it to the root, I see it's taking place. I think I would like to tick on use scene motion vectors. And I think I should scroll through different blend modes and choose something a little bit less aggressive, so we actually see the video a little bit better. I'm quite happy with dodge. I think I'm going to keep that. Now, it would be a lot to expect for you guys to know exactly how every single post effect looks from the get-go, so there are some aids there. So if you right-click on the node in the node list, you can actually go straight to the manual page corresponding with that specific post effect. And you will have a little visual representation of the node and its rigging setup. You can access the very same manual page straight from the node graph as well, if you press on the question mark here in the top corner of properties. Another handy tip, if you go straight to the top of the post effects entry in the manual, you will be presented with small icons of every single post effect available in Notch. So this should help you understand and imagine how one or the other post effect looks and applies. So with that said, I think I'm going to add one more post effect, vector blur, and I'm going to connect it to the root. It's a little bit harsh. I think I'm going to reduce the steps to something like 20. Maybe our orientation could be changed to, let's say, 200. And I'm going to decrease the dampening a lot. Right, I think this is a good time to try out different post effects available in our post effect list. And again, there's quite a few of them here. And once we are good and satisfied with what we achieved, we will move on to the next workshop, which is advanced post-processing. Welcome back to the workshops. So far we covered basic video processing and basic post effects. I think it's good time to move on to a little bit more advanced setup. So I'm pressing on timeline. I'm just going to point out that there's several designs already pre-built for you. Now we're going to be building something very alike to this setting right here, the number 3. But once we're going to be done with the workshop, you'll be able to recreate any and all of these settings and likely make something even better and much nicer looking. So with that said, I'm making a new layer now. So I'm going to right click on an empty space here and I'm going to choose insert layer option. I'm going to call this layer composite. Right, with that done, I'm going to go back to the node graph and I'm going to start building my initial setup. First node that we're going to use is absolutely the same one as in a previous setting, image 2D. Right, so as I connect it to the root, I see that it's filling the available space with white quad. That's great. Now we need some kind of a video as an output. So I'm going to grab the very same base. So what if we want to build a little bit more intricate processing chain? For instance, perhaps I want to have red outlines on this video, and those outlines should be expressed with little dots. And the video in the back or beneath it should be black and white. So how would I go about it? Obviously, I could try to use some blend modes in post effects, or I can actually build a little processing chain with nulls here. I think I'm going to go for that. So as you see, we have quite a few nulls to choose from. In this case, we're going to be talking about a video null. So that's the last option here in this list. Right, so first of all, I'm going to daisy chain these nodes. So video loader to video null and null to the image 2D first input. And I guess the best way to describe what video null does is literally to show how it behaves with post effects. But before I add any post effects, I want to make sure that we can see how does this null and this video loader look. So I'm going to shift double click on the video loader and I'm going to shift double click on the null. As you see, null is a direct copy of the video loader. I'm going to leave some comments here so we actually understand which one is the loader and which one is the null. I can do that by adding a comment node. Video loader. And let's call this video null1, as we will add more. Great. So, post effects. I'm going to go for edge detect. Notice what happens if I connect edge detect to the video loader. All of a sudden, this edge detect is inherited by video null, and then output it to the image 2D. I'm going to make this edge detect a little bit more prominent, so I'm going to set it to 2 iterations in width. But look what happens if I connect this edge detect to the video null. All of a sudden, our video loader is actually intact, so it's clean. Great. So before I move on, I think I'm going to color my edge detect to a red color. And I'm going to add those dots, as I mentioned before. So I think dot matrix will be a perfect node to achieve the briefing that we discussed in the beginning of the workshop. There we go. Now we have little dots on the edges. Okay, so let's build a separate chain here for the black and white pass. I'm going to go ahead and grab yet another video null. I'm going to connect it to the video loader. Let's expand it so we see how it looks. So shift double click and let's give it a name. So I'm going to copy and paste the comment node and I'm going to call this video null 2. So for the bottom one, we've said that we want to have it in black and white. I'm going to go for color correction node. Now, mind you, color is the British color with the U. So be aware and type it in with the U. So with that done, I think I can go for saturation and just zero it out. There we go. Now it's in black and white. So the next step here would be to merge those two video nulls back together so we can see both of the settings combined. So for that, we have a specific node and it's called composite sources. I'm going to bring that to the scene and I'm going to unhook this video null from the image 2D. As now we have one chain processing and this one is completely disregarded. So we're going to use composite sources to connect those two video nulls and then output it to the image 2D. Right, so I'm connecting video null to the first input here on the left hand side and the second video null to the first in the bottom. So why are we using two inputs for the same node? And they actually state quite similar naming conventions. So composite source and composite sources and composite source. Well, they fulfill a little bit different tasks. So the top one is actually driving the frame rate and driving the resolution. So if my video null 1 or this video here would be 4K, the bottom video would be upscaled to 4K as well. Same thing with the frame rate. If this one would be set to 60, this video right here would be upscaled to 60 FPS as well. So this is more or less a parent or a driver, and this is the follower. So with both of those nodes now connected to the composite sources, I can connect the very node to the image 2D for the output. And there we go. Now we're outputting the unified signal via composite source to the image 2D. So let's talk about different settings in the composite sources node. First of all, we have blend amount. So we can actually choose whichever the source is being outputted. So it's like a little switch. Now clearly that's not exactly what we're going for. We actually want to see them both at the same time. So I'm going to go and change a blend mode. In this case, if I go for add, it does exactly what I was aiming for. Great. So let's push this setting a little bit further. I think next thing that I want to add to this setup is a color LUT. We have several of them available here in resources. So I'm just going to pull in the first one. And I think I'm going to connect it to the composite sources. There we go. So color LEDs, just like video sources, can be toggled through via dropdown until you find the one that you like. So any and all color LEDs that you have in your resources will be available here in the dropdown. I'm quite happy with the 002 color LED. So color LEDs are actually industry standard grading tools. You can find quite a few of them available online. I'm a big fan of Grayscale Gorilla LEDs. It's a little bit of an investment, but it's definitely worth it. You can probably find quite a few of them available for free as well, or you can build your own. You can do that via Photoshop or DaVinci Resolve or quite a few other various options. Right, let's change some post effects here. I think I'm going to get rid of the dot matrix for now. And I think I'm going to go for data mosh again, as we did in the previous setting. So I'm going to connect it here to the first video null. I'm actually quite happy with the way it looks by default, but I think I'm going to go ahead and tick on use scene motion vectors. Let's see if any other blend mode would make it look a bit nicer. In fact, I think the default blend is just alright. I'm going to keep it at that. I'm going to add some post effects to the second video null too. I think here I will go for frame difference. And I think I'm going to set the number of frames to 25. Let's toggle through the different blend modes. Min, max, I think minimum or the min looks much better. So this is getting somewhere, this is getting a little bit more exciting. Right, I think I like where this is going, but I think we should address the readability of this setting. It's a little bit hard to make out this person in the image. Now we are used to it by now, so we actually understand what's going on, but the person seeing this image first time might have a difficulty understanding what exactly do they see. So a good way around it, or one of the tricks that I use, is the matte workflow. So let's add an extra image 2D. As I connect the new image 2D to the root, I see that it's overtaking the design. So all of a sudden, again, we have a white quad. And that's stacking order. Depending on where you leave your nodes, it either renders behind the design that we created or in front. In this case, I want this to render in front. I think now I'm going to grab the video loader and I'm going to place it a little bit lower here. I want to use that same video loader for this image 2D. Before I connect those two, I don't want to connect them directly. I think I'm going to add a video null in between, just so we can attach any and all post effects in between if we want to. Right, let's move this a little bit to the side too, so we see the connections better. Great. So, to be able to use a matte workflow, or in our case, alpha image workflow, we need some kind of a source to drive the visibility of the top layer and the bottom layer. I think I'm going to go for generator. A perfect way to illustrate this case is to use something like star. So I'm going to grab a star generator. I'm going to shift double click to preview how it looks. I'm going to pipe it into the second input alpha image. And as you can see now, this black and white pass is driving the visibility of the top and bottom layer. I think it would be nice to shape it up a little bit. On the scale Y, I'm going to use a small formula, 16 divided by 9. And I think I'm going to bump up the numbers here so it matches our video. I think it's going to be 1920 by 1080. There we go. So now if I toggle it on and off, because we have here a preview in viewport option, you can see exactly what's going on. So where we see the white color, it's the top layer, and when we see the alpha, it's the layer beneath. So obviously much better choice than star here would be fractal noise. So I'm going to grab fractal noise generator. I'm going to connect it to the same input, shift double click it to expand it, and I'm going to use the preview in the viewport option to actually further shape it so it looks a little bit more interesting or a little bit closer to the setting that we have. So first of all, let's make it into a 16 by 9 setting so it fills the whole canvas, so 1920 by 1080 on the width and height. And maybe let's add some gain. I think the noise scale is a little bit too big. The blobs could be quite bigger in scale, and there could be less of them. There we go. I'm quite happy with this. So now if I tick off the preview in the viewport, I will see that the I can see that the white blobs are the layer in front and the alpha is the layer behind. There we go. With a very little effort, we actually introduced quite a bit of readability to this design. Okay, let's add a couple more things. Let's move on. You remember I mentioned that every single video loader has a preview in the viewport option. Well, so does the video nulls. So if you want to work on specific iteration or specific part of the chain, you can always press on the video null that you are interested in, click on preview in the viewport, and you will see exactly how that video null or how that piece of the processing chain looks. Now be aware, you should always tick it off once you're done editing. In the beginning of the chapter, I briefly mentioned that every single image 2D has its own blend mode. Let's take advantage of that. Let's add yet one more image 2D to the scene. So I'm going to connect it to the root. And again, I'm going to add a null in between source and the image 2Ds, just so I can add some post effects if I want to. If I was to apply post effects straight on a video loader, it would affect all the rest of the chain. That's why I always want to have a null in between. So I'm going to shift double click to see exactly how this video null looks. And I think I'm going to apply threshold here. I don't want to output the color, I just want to output the mask. I literally just want to see a black and white pass. I think I might tweak a little bit the threshold and fall off range, so it would be a little bit slicker. So maybe 0.05 on fall off and 0.5 on threshold setting. Yeah, that's all right. I do want this to be in color, so I'm gonna go for tint option here. And I think I'm gonna make it red. Right, I think I'm done with altering this look. Now I can come back to the image 2D and choose another type of blend mode. So all of a sudden, designs that I had in the back and this new image 2D actually is merging together to make one unified look. Okay, let's recap the most important things we discussed in this setup right here. We used video nulls, and we applied different post effects on those video nulls. We brought them back together with a composite source, and in a composite source we have blend modes that we can choose from. And of course we have a blend amount slider if we want to choose one or the other one as a main rendering output. Then we tried out the alpha image, which is literally a matte workflow here in Notch. And then we revisited the blend modes in image 2D. So let's spend a little bit more time here. Let's add some creative post effects. And once you're done with your design, I will meet you in the next workshop where we're going to talk about live green screen keying.